The life and times of Viv Nicholson, dealing with twists of fortune which, I suspect happily, most of us don't have to confront. Her son Howard was speaking to Simon Watts. That's it for this edition of the History Hour. This is Max Pearson. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
This is the BBC World Service, where we visit a unique training school in the Middle East.
An ancient Christian art.
The icon is not like the free art, it's a prayer.
Being revived in Bethlehem.
I wanted people to be able to have a living wage from painting icons.
I like to draw Jesus and Virgin Mary.
The Icon Painters of Bethlehem at bbcworldservice.com.
This is the BBC World Service. BBC World Service, now the strikes of Big Ben for midnight, Greenwich Mean Time. From us all here at the BBC World Service, we wish you a very happy and peaceful New Year. This is the BBC News with Nick Kelly. President Hassan Rouhani of Iran has said that the people have the right to protest, but not to commit acts of violence. It was his first comment since anti-government protests began 4 days ago.
In recent days, we've witnessed protests. Everyone must be aware of this point, that we are a free nation, and according to the Constitution and human rights, the people are absolutely free to criticize the government and even to protest. But their protests should be done in such a way that they improve the situation in our country.
Mr. Rouhani blamed the current problems facing Iranians on international sanctions. Protests have now spread to many cities. Saudi Arabia's official news agency says the local price of some petrol will more than double from the 1st of January. The measures coincide with Saudi government plans to make the economy less dependent on income from oil exports. The Saudis, along with the United Arab Emirates, will also be bringing in a new consumer tax. Here's Andrew Walker.
Oil prices have moved sharply since a decline began in mid-2014. At the lowest point, they were down about 3/4 before staging a partial recovery. The swings have also brought instability to government finances in oil-producing nations, so many are keen to find other, less turbulent sources of revenue. 6 countries in the Gulf have agreed to introduce a value-added tax, which ultimately falls on consumers. The moves to diversify government revenue reflect recent developments in the oil market. But there's a longer-term issue too. The possibility that global efforts to tackle climate change may undermine demand for fossil fuels and further restrict their scope to finance government spending from oil revenue.
Venezuela's government is raising the minimum wage by 40% from the start of 2018. President Nicolas Maduro has said this would protect workers from what he called America's economic war on the country. Simon Ponsford reports.
With a Venezuelan flag beside him, President Maduro told people he was declaring good news, a big increase in the pay packets of workers across the country. But Venezuela is already suffering from the world's fastest inflation, and critics warn that the measure will simply make the economic crisis even worse. The opposition says prices in 2017 rose by at least 1,400%, and millions of people are living in poverty. But President Maduro spent most of his speech blaming other countries, most of all the United States, for Venezuela's problems.
The Chinese President Xi Jinping has suggested that his country will play a bigger role in world affairs in 2018. In a speech to mark the new year, Mr. Xi said China would maintain the authority of the United Nations, and he pledged to help tackle climate change. You're listening to the World News from the BBC. The state of Assam in northeast India has published a draft register of citizens as part of plans to deport illegal immigrants back to neighbouring Bangladesh. Muslim community leaders say the list is an attempt to make non-Hindus stateless, like the Rohingya Muslims of Myanmar. Ambrasan Isirajan reports.
Politicians in India's Assam state have long accused Bangladeshi Muslims of illegally crossing over into the state and taking the jobs of Hindus. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Hindu nationalist BJP, which won state elections in 2016, has promised to act against what it calls illegal Muslim residents. It says the draft list will contain the names of all those who can claim residency in the state. People are afraid that if the names are missing, they could be deported.
The Costa Rican government says 10 US citizens and 2 local pilots have been killed when a small passenger plane crashed shortly after takeoff in the northwest of the country. The cause of the crash is not yet known. Revellers have gathered in city centres across Europe and Africa to celebrate the new year. Security is especially tight in Paris, London and Berlin. Head of the London countdown, the city's mayor Sadiq Khan told the BBC why 2018 had special significance.
More than 100,000 people will be here tonight. The first half, I can give you the secret way now, the first half of the soundtrack will feature mainly London artists. The second half will be just great women artists. Why? Because 2018 is 100 years since women first got the right to vote. We're going to use it to celebrate women getting the votes, to mark the progress made, but also to use it as a way of driving forward to finally end gender inequality. And 2018 will be a year where we do that.
And an hour ago, the German capital rang in the new year with fireworks at the Brandenburg Gate. Celebrations well underway, and once again, from us all in the BBC Newsroom, we wish you a very happy new year.
Hello and welcome to the Arts Hour New Year.